briefly want to talk to you about what is known, the state of the science regarding omega-3 fatty acids and health. And I say very briefly because this area really in nutrition is the area that has exploded in terms of our knowledge and the articles printed and studies published in this area. There has been more than 1,000 articles in the last 5 years on looking at the different effects of omega-3 fatty acids in our health. So very briefly, what we know is that omega-3 fatty acids are very important in cardiovascular health, the health of our body, the health of our arteries, our capillaries in general, the health of and function of the circulatory system as a whole. Very, very important in inflammation. They are very potent anti-inflammatory effect, and I will tell you much more about these areas as we're looking particularly here. Very important in brain function. This is because omega-3 fatty acids are the building blocks from of the brain and nervous tissue. As we were talking with one expert in this area, the body has an amazing ability to capture omega-3 fatty acids, transport them in the developing brain, and conserving them as much as they can during our lifetime because they are essential to the function, and not only in cognition, in our senses, but also in behavioral and emotional states. Very, very, very important. And many research studies are being done in this area. Also very important for eye health. The eyes, the visual system is part of the nervous system, so obviously this is very important here. And also, other than the developmental aspect of the visual system, it's very important in maintaining healthy eyes. Because the eyes are an organ, just being in the surface, that the organ that receives the most stress from all our body. So it has the highest level of oxygen. It needs to be really very protective, and omega-3 fatty acids are key in protection here. As you know, very important in maternal health and well-being, and obviously essential for healthy development of the embryo from conception all the way to birth, throughout pregnancy and through infancy. Critical nutrients. And finally, in maintaining our connective tissue, flexible joints, and prevention of pain and arthritis. All these studies have been done not only in the laboratory, but there have been many very large epidemiological studies that have shown that omega-3 fatty acids, high levels of omega-3 fatty acids in the diet, or supplementation with omega-3 fatty acids are protective in diseases where all these systems are involved. So we don't only have laboratory data, but we have an enormous body of epidemiological and clinical studies. So very, very strong basis on their protective effect. Okay. Looking now, we are going to look just a little bit in more detail at the protection of omega-3 fatty acids against cardiovascular disease. And this I want to start with here because this was one of the reasons why we started our first clinical study. One of the first evidence of protection of omega-3 fatty acids in our health was precisely looking at reduction of cardiovascular disease. This at that time triggered a lot of interest because cardiovascular disease was then, and it still continues to be, the #1 killer in the world. It affects cardiovascular disease affects many hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the world. And for example, in the U.S., 80 million people are affected by cardiovascular disease, and it causes 1 out of 5 deaths. And this is both men and women and of all ethnic and racial distinctions. So it's an overall number. By far is the first disease of interest to all the health agencies. There are many risks for cardiovascular disease, and one of the ones that is the most consistent is the high triglyceride levels indicate a high risk of cardiovascular disease. And I'm mentioning this because this was one of the first indications where omega-3 fatty acids showed a very drastic and very consistent benefits in lowering triglyceride levels. But also there was from the beginning to the present, there has been a series of clinical and very large epidemiological studies which have shown protection of omega-3 fatty acids against morbidity and mortality of heart disease. Next slide. Okay. So when we looked at this, we thought, okay, so there's all this evidence that omega-3 fatty acids protect cardiovascular disease. Is there an evidence? Can we prove that this same protection that all these studies have shown, we can achieve the same protection by supplementing with omega-3 fatty acids, GNLD salmon oil plus? This was very important for us to prove. It's not only saying, okay, this or product contains omega-3 fatty acids, and for that reason it has this benefit. What we wanted to show is that, in fact, we could replicate the protection that was demonstrated in all these large epidemiological studies where different amounts of fish were given. We wanted to show that, in fact, we could also have the same protection with our product GNLD salmon oil plus. So we got together with Health Research and Study Center and designed a study in normal people that would represent or distributors, healthy individuals from ages 35 to 65, and that were supplemented with 3 capsules of salmon oil plus daily. So we wanted just to see how it would be, the protection would be in individuals much like or distributors at more or less the same doses that they would be taking. Our goal was to show protection on markers of cardiovascular disease. We also wanted to show if we could replicate the anti-inflammatory effects that have been shown before. In a nutshell, very quickly, we had 35 subjects supplemented with 3 capsules of omega-3 fatty acids, salmon oil plus, per daily, and for 8 weeks. And we measured, took blood and measured a number of indicators at the beginning of the study, after 4 weeks, and after 8 weeks of supplementation. Okay, so what did we show? Well, for one thing, we showed that yes, indeed, we could salmon oil plus would lower triglyceride levels by more than 17% in 8 weeks. All our participants in our study had more or less entered the study with more or less safe, in the range of safe levels of triglyceride blood levels. But in fact of that, we did see a reduction of about 17%. What was very interesting, and this was very significant, what was very interesting to us is that the effect was greater, up to 50%, in those participants that started at very high levels of triglycerides. We also saw that there was an increase in omega-3 index. Omega-3 index is a physiological marker of mortality from heart disease. So this increase in omega-3 index during the duration of the study means that the participants were more protected from death from cardiovascular disease. It's a very reliable indicator of death of cardiovascular disease. And it was arrived by very large epidemiological studies that correlated the levels of omega-3 fatty acids in red blood cell levels and mortality on heart disease risk. So yes, indeed, omega-3 fatty acids from salmon oil plus reduce triglycerides and improve significantly omega-3 index. Okay. Then we looked at inflammation, and here is where I'm going to go in a little bit more slowly because this will follow up with the latest studies that I will have opportunity to tell you. Well, inflammation is a necessary process. It's a way that the immune system has to defend itself against injury, either bacterial or stress or a physical disruption of the tissue. So it is a totally normal process. I'm going to tell you about two instances so that you can relate of what is happening. One is when you go to the sun and you get exposed to the sun for many hours, you become red, it's painful, and it swells. Those are pain, redness, and swelling indicators of inflammation. Or when you cut yourself, it becomes red, it becomes painful and swelling. So that's necessary. In healthy inflammation, that is done to kill any bacterial or virus that might have entered the skin, or to repair tissue that has been damaged, like in the situation of the sun exposure. So normal inflammation, it comes, it does its function, and it's over. However, if inflammation is left unchecked, it proceeds and becomes perpetual or chronic, and this is the basis of chronic inflammatory conditions. It has been shown that many of the diseases, the chronic diseases, have a basis on unregulated, unbalanced inflammation. And these diseases here are shown for cardiovascular disease, cancer, inflammatory diseases, diabetes, arthritis, and even neurological disorders. So what leads to this imbalance? Well, there are many environmental factors, the state of health, but very important, it is an imbalance in the regulators of inflammation. And just remember this, the regulators of inflammation, because I'll talk to you a little bit more. So here is where omega-3 fatty acids come in. They have a very potent anti-inflammatory effects, and they help to modulate the cellular function related to inflammation. Like all long-chain fatty acids, they reside in the cell surfaces, where they help to modulate this group of compounds, which are the eicosanoid system. Eicosanoids are just the signals that the cell has to tell that to start or propagate or finish an inflammatory process. For example, one of the pro-inflammatory fatty acids is that is arachidonic acid. It's an omega-6 fatty acid, would be leading to pro-inflammatory eicosanoids. Omega-3 fatty acids are the building blocks for anti-inflammatory eicosanoids. So that's how the system works. In our study, we measured the level of omega-3 fatty acids in the membrane of red blood cells, and we showed that the supplementation for only 8 weeks had a drastic reduction in the inflammatory index. The inflammatory index is an index that tells the tendency of the individual towards inflammation and inflammatory conditions. How this index is arrived? It's arrived by looking at the proportion of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids, by looking at the ratio of arachidonic acid and EPA and DHA in the membrane. So we showed that only 8 weeks of supplementation resulted in a drastic reduction in the inflammatory index. We also saw that omega-3 fatty acids displaced the pro-inflammatory arachidonic acid from cell membranes, and also improved dramatically the omega-3 and omega-6 balance towards less inflammation. Okay, so all this is known. So we know that omega-3 fatty acids are important for our heart and the health of our heart and our circulatory system. We also know that they have a very strong anti-inflammatory effect. But exactly what their role is something that is only now beginning to be understood. It's very recent. And this is because it was only 10 years ago that compounds were identified and discovered in Harvard Medical School and Louisiana State University. This group of scientists discovered these compounds that somehow stopped the inflammatory process. So they were very important in terminating or resolving the inflammatory process. One of these scientists that was in the Harvard Medical School team is Dr. Carsten Brunner, and he now has moved to UC Berkeley, where he has a complete lab set up to identify these new compounds that are called resolvins and protectins, because what their function is that they terminate the inflammatory process. Okay, so what is very, very exciting for us is that, as in the last few years, they have found that these resolvins and protectins are in fact made from omega-3 fatty acids. So the way that omega-3 fatty acids have their anti-inflammatory effect is because they are the building blocks of these compounds, the protectins and resolvins, that terminate the inflammatory process. What happens in the diet today is that the Western diet has very high levels of omega-6 fatty acids and very low levels of omega-3 fatty acids. The omega-6 fatty acids are precursors of arachidonic acid that is responsible for inflammation. On the other hand, they have very low levels of omega-3 fatty acids that are important for the formation of these protectins and resolvins that are important in finishing the inflammatory process, and so ensuring a healthy inflammatory balance and promote healing. So now this is what I'm going to talk to you a little bit more. So how does this work? A process starts of inflammation. The inflammation begins. It does its role, and it resolves itself. If it doesn't resolve itself, the healing process cannot start, because the perpetuation of the inflammatory process causes damage to the adjacent cells. So for healing to happen, you have to stop the inflammatory process. This is a very controlled and actively controlled, step-by-step process that the body has to deal with infection and other stress and tissue damage. You have the beginning of inflammation, the inflammatory process, resolution of inflammation, and healing. And these compounds, the resolvins and protectants, are the ones that move the inflammatory process towards resolution. And this is exactly what we found in our study. These individuals that we supplemented with omega-3 fatty acid, we collected the blood, and we found that it is just a little bit complicated. I'm trying to explain it in the easiest way. Is that while at the beginning of the studies, the activated the cells that are responsible for inflammatory process were very activated, after a period of 8 weeks of supplementation, these cells, actually they're called the lymphocytes, were not activated when presented with a inflammatory stimulus. So this means that these individuals were very protected against inflammatory processes and promote and to move from the state of inflammation towards healing. At the same time this happened, there were we saw no adverse effect on the healthy immune system and other inflammatory responses like clotting or any healthy response of the immune system. Okay, so basically, I hopefully I didn't confuse everybody, but I just wanted to know that that the effects that I told you about have been effects that have been proven with omega-3 fatty acids from our salmon oil plus, which is very important. One of the few companies that actually test the efficacy of their product regularly, and these benefits we have shown: anti-inflammatory benefit, heart protecting benefit, and also what we are showing here is that they promote resolution of inflammation so that healing can happen. It's really at the forefront of what is happening in omega-3 fatty acid research. Why omega-3 fatty acid salmon oil plus is this omega-3 fatty acid supplement that we should consume, is that it is the only one that provides the 8 members of the omega-3 fatty acid family. It is very high potency. It is ultra pure. One of the things that you have to remember is that many members of the GNLD Scientific Advisory Board are toxicologists. One of their main concerns is delivering a product that is wholesome, pure, without any contaminants, and this is their forefront in their mind. This is particularly important in respect to omega-3 fatty acid supplements from fish. Fish. It's their purity, and as you always know, GNLD products have warranty, potency. They are the highest quality possible, and they are products that you can trust for the rest of your life. And thank you very much. And here's John to give you some concluding points.
Well, as you can see, Arianna is very dialed into the science behind these products, and you'd expect that. She's, been committed to GNLD and doing research and bringing this sort of research to us for many, many years. I'd just like to recap very quickly what we talked about. The studies we've been doing, these human clinical trials, are called intervention studies, and what makes that important is the product is introduced to essentially free living people in a manner just like you would take it yourself or you would introduce it to a customer. They just start taking the product. We didn't ask them to, do anything different in their lives or act any different than they normally do. Just begin taking the product. And I think that's important because the benefits that we saw were tremendous, even with just that. Just taking 3 omega-3 salmon oil plus a day provided these tremendous benefits. As Arianna told you, we proved that they are cardioprotective, that they can reduce your triglyceride levels rather dramatically. And actually, the more you need to have your triglyceride levels reduced, the better job they do of reducing them. On average, in the population that we looked at in this clinical trial, it was reduced by 17%. But those who needed it the most, people who had cholesterol or triglyceride numbers up in the 200, 300 range, maybe even higher, experienced as much as a 50% reduction in that little bit of time. And that's really an amazing thing. So, those who need the help the most, the product facilitates that the most, especially when it comes to triglyceride reduction. And, we talked about this idea of improving the omega-3 index. Omega-3 index is a very direct reflection of your risk of cardiovascular disease or your probability of cardiovascular health. And again, in a short period of time, we improved that rather dramatically. We went on to look at the anti-inflammatory aspects of omega-3 fatty acids, again, well established in literature. Very few companies actually have any proof that their products do these things, but just like always, the Scientific Advisory Board and the company wanted to make sure that, the product that we were promoting for people's health and longevity was actually going to provide the benefits that would be needed. So in the case of inflammatory conditions, a couple of things about those. We lowered the inflammatory index. The inflammatory index is not only a signal or a sign of your relative risk of inflammatory diseases. Anything that ends in arthritis, anything that ends in itis, like arthritis, for example, would be an inflammatory disease. But it's also a reflection of the rate at which you're aging. If you are inflamed, you are aging at a faster rate than you need to. So when you lower the inflammatory index, you actually lower the rate at which you age as well. Very, very important. It's not just disease reduction, disease risk reduction, but the speed of aging, reducing the speed of aging. And finally, in these most recent studies, we have shown that omega-3 salmon oil plus has the ability to support the production of these resolvins and protectants, right, that support natural immune function, resolve inflammation, and really the most important thing I think here is promote the healing process, because until inflammation is resolved, we know now, until that happens, healing can't take place. And it's safe to say that large portions of the population, therefore, run around in this sort of semi-healed state.
Yeah. Well, it is true, because if you think about inflammation, I was talking about the eye, but in every part during a normal day, you can envision that there is a little process of inflammation going on that you have that you're not detecting, because it's going on in the subsurface, repairing damaged tissue, getting rid of old cells, and so it is important to realize that this process needs these resolvings so that they keep being under the level, and so healing can keep on happening every day of our lives.
Yeah, right. And anybody that goes out and does anything that in their life that causes a little bit of wear and tear, if you're active in sport, you do a little damage, you create a little inflammation. Part of training and getting your body strong is the process of adapting to that challenge and healing from it and growing a stronger body. And without omega-3 fatty acids, that process can be compromised, and you can actually, I suppose, do yourself more harm than good going out and living an active lifestyle. So this is very important. This piece of research that we just talked about, on the screen you'll see an article by Dr. Groner and Dr. Carughi called Inflammation. That article is available right now for those of you who are listening in from Australia and New Zealand. You can go to your distributor-only homepage and look for a link that says Salmon Oil Plus, putting heal in healthy, and you'll be able to download a PDF of this study that Dr. Arianna Carughi just presented to you right now, the one that she and Dr. Groenick participated in. So you'll be able to download that. There's a little overview there as well. For those of you listening in here in North America, if you will call your distributor services rep on Monday, they will be able to send you that, email that PDF to you right away at that time. So just call in and say you would like the inflammation PDF from the session here on Friday night, and you'll be able to get that. On a broader context, we are in the process of finalizing an upgrade to our Salmon Oil Plus mini website that you see there. There is a lot of information that is not in the current one that we are adding. This new information about inflammation will be in there as well. We don't expect that site is very far away. It should be up and operating fully here by about the 1st of September. And in there you'll be able to download not only this study, but all of the studies and all of the information that's been associated with our amazing product, Omega-3 Salmon Oil Plus. So anyway, thank you on behalf of myself and
thank you very much for your
Dr. Carughi here and all of the members of the Scientific Advisory Board and all of the members of the company. Thanks very much. You have a very exciting new story to go to talk to people. You know, GNLD and Salmon Oil Plus now give you the opportunity to put heal in healthy. So take care, be well, and we'll see you someplace in the world. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.